It's rock and roll!
Welcome to Look It's Rock and Roll. We're a podcast about music, pop culture, really anything we want to talk about. Might even do a movie now and then. But one of the things that we really want to do on this show is to focus on bands' new releases. We want to support artists. We want to support their music. We want to support what they're doing. So indie bands, unsigned bands, established legacy acts, we don't care. All we care about is new music, ear candy. Today I'm joined by Mark Anthony Kay, which if you've been on our show, you've seen our shows. Mark is usually a principal partner on this show, on the KissFAQ podcast. He's also a good friend, but it's really nice to talk to him today as a musician who's debuting new music. I think your single came out last night. You jumped the gun again, didn't you?
Yeah, it was supposed to be today, but, I figured why not just, because I was doing all the work to get it up onto the Bandcamp, and I said I might as well just put it up instead of having to wait at midnight and come back on and.
So welcome, Mark. Let's talk about your new Dark Monarchy project. Why don't you just give us an overview of how Dark Monarchy came about?
Well, as you know, I have Project Gemini, which is my main act that I do, my main band. And I had released, or was working on actually, my fourth album, which was in the year 3073, Book 1. During that time when I was working on it, another gentleman that I know named Joe Bailey had his album played on a radio show called Check It Out, which is a pretty popular podcast show in England. And I was in their chat room because I frequent it quite a bit, because I like hanging out with those people. They're great people on there. And he was in there supporting his album that he had just released. And I mentioned to him how much I loved it because he was in the chat room, and I said that, he had a great voice and so on and so forth. And in a little private chat out of the chat room, I messaged him and asked him if he might be interested in appearing on my new record and doing some vocals. And much to my surprise, he said that he had heard my prior records, Man of Science, Man of Dreams, and liked it a lot, and said that he would love to appear on it and do it. So for me, you got to understand, this is something pretty big, because up to that point, I had nobody appear on my records. I did everything top to bottom, including the mixing, the mastering, everything I did myself, apart from artwork. I've never done that myself. But everything else I've done myself. So to have somebody else come in was a big thing, and it had to be somebody who I trusted and respected, which I did with Joe. And I gave him the songs that I wanted him to work on. I gave him two initially, which was Children of Hope, and I think the other one was Keepers of the Past. Yeah. And he sent me back the songs, and I absolutely loved it. I thought he did a amazing job on it. So I right away messaged him back and said, hey, can you just do also, Let Your Spirit Fly, the first song as well? And he said, yeah, sure, why not? So I gave it to him. He sent it back, and it was amazing. I loved it. So after that was done, I got a hold of him after, and I said, you know what? I go, this was so much fun, collaborating with this. What would you think about actually doing a full record together? And before I asked him, I had asked the DJ who had that radio show, the Check It Out show, and asked him, what do you think? Would Joe be interested, do you think? Because he knew him very well as well. And he goes, yeah. He goes, it might be an awesome combination, right? So I contacted him, and he was right away interested. I was very surprised at how quickly he was like, yeah, I'm all in. I'd love to do it. So we got together and started exchanging song ideas, and yeah, it's been fantastic, the whole process.
So Joe's a multi-instrumentalist in addition to being a vocalist. Now, obviously, on your Project Gemini album, where he was a guest, he only contributed vocals, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Now he's contributing more. You've debuted your brand new track, Better Posers, last night and today, and that's what this episode is primarily about, the first single from this project. But he's credited on bass, on vocals, on a whole bunch of other things. For you, as someone who's been a one-man show, how challenging is that to say to a new collaborator on the music side, not just the vocals, to kind of let someone in?
Um, I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it actually was, to be honest with you. And I think it's mainly because, like I said before, I have respect for Joe. I love his music that he's done. So when I gave him my ideas, and I'll get into how we wrote because that's probably one of the most fascinating things about the whole thing, is that when I gave him the parts to do, we had initially agreed beforehand that he was going to do certain things and I was going to do certain things. I would do all the guitars. I would do all the like I would do the drumming as well. We both shared the drumming tasks, and that I would do the keyboard solo parts, like the kind of Rick Wakeman mini Moog solo things, right? And that would be my department, and I would do vocals as well because he insisted that I sang as well, right? At first I was like, you can sing if you want for the whole thing. He goes, no, 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 no. He goes, I want you to sing as well on this. So, which was fantastic. I thought that was very great and gracious of him because he has a very strong voice, and to be able to do it with him is great, right? So we went ahead and decided that he would do bass and drums, and the majority of all the symphonic things, like all the orchestra parts and the violins and the choir parts and everything. That's all Joe. And you know what? It wasn't an issue because I had heard what he had done before with his music, and I liked it. I loved his bass playing. He's mainly a bass player, but everything else he had learned just like me. He learned how to sequence drums and do all the keyboard stuff. And he's a great keyboard arranger for those kind of orchestra parts that he's done. Like they're really really dense. When I went and checked out the parts, he had separate violin, separate cello, separate this, and then he just rendered them together because otherwise I would have 90 tracks, which would have been a nightmare to mix, right? So he put them together and he put choir parts together. It's just really good. Let's just put it this way. To answer your question, it wasn't really that difficult to do because I knew that I was going to get something good back and that I would be surprised with it, and I was.
I think that's one of the things that jumped out at me immediately on the first listen of this. Project Gemini has a very identifiable sound. There's kind of an undercurrent that runs through, and while you've developed and changed from album to album with some of the themes that you discuss and sing about, musically you have a very identifiable style to me. Mm-hmm. With this new song, Better Posers, the choir is the part that jumps out at me immediately, and some of the symphonic keyboard undertones and how that's all been sequenced and put together. But it was the choir part that I was like, wow, this is completely different from Project Gemini. There are elements that are Mark that transcend any label of a band that runs through your music, whether it's your Lower Third Collective project or Project Gemini, and now Dark Monarchy. Is that what you envisaged when you brought Joe in, that you thought that he could really contribute on that on that level? And how did you approach the songwriting for this? Was it a partnership? Was it someone started with an idea and built a wall? Explain that.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely knew that when I asked Joe to come in, that he had a great wealth of knowledge with the whole orchestra choir making part. That's something that he has a much better grasp of than I do, and he has all these fantastic programs to do this stuff. And me, I'm a little bit more old school that way. Like I have my EX7 keyboard and I have my Gaia keyboard, and I do a lot of the stuff by hand and I just play it a lot. He does a lot of it within programs, and he also plays as well, obviously, but he has so many programs specified to that kind of stuff, like orchestra programs and stuff like that, that's one of the things I was really excited about on this, is because I knew he would add that element to it and give it that kind of more lush sound into it. I made it a little bit more epic, a little bit more grandiose in parts, right? And I was all for that. Also, I knew his style of bass playing was very melodic as well. He had a good sense of melody. I love the way he plays. He's definitely not a just straight root note player. He does a lot of unison lines with me in songs, which you'll hear on the album. just fantastic sense of melody. And what I really enjoyed about this was the songwriting. And I'm really glad you asked about that, because the way we decided to do this was we decided, okay, let's do 8 songs as a ballpark number. Okay. So I'll write 4, you write 4. But the way we decided to write it was very fascinating, and I loved it. I think we're going to always do it this way, is each person wrote about the first 2.5 to 3 minutes of the song. After they were done writing that, and it would be me, I would just give him like drums and a rough guitar, right? I would send it over to him, and he would complete the rest of the song from the 3-minute point up to wherever he wanted to end it. And he did the same thing to me. He sent me 3 or 4 songs, and he would do up to 2 minutes, sometimes up to 3.5 minutes, and say, okay, now you finish the rest of it. So this song, for example, was his song that he sent me the first 3.5 minutes of. And from that point on, I completed the rest. Right, so he would just finish the drumming for it, and that's why we shared the drumming, because I did the drums for the first 3 minutes, then he did the drumming for the last 3 minutes of it. So, and then I would fill in the rest of it. So for the ending of the song, I would put the rest of the guitars in, redo all the guitars for the whole song, and then he would put in bass for the whole song. You know what I mean? And then we would just fill in the rest of the song once the structure has been written. So every song we did that way. I would write half of it, he would write the end half, then he would write the first half, and then I do the ending half.
Now, that speaks more to the kind of the musicality of the song. In terms of the lyrics, one thing that struck me on Better Posers is that it's going into an area of, subject matter, poverty and homelessness that you haven't really touched on specifically. Some of your songs might have a similar sort of, human element to them about the challenges facing it. Did those sorts of ideas appeal, or were they something that you had to get your head around? When someone else brings in a song idea and says, I've started this song, it's, did he bring in the lyrics and the melody at that point, and you're working from what he's created? Where does the songwriting, the lyrics is what I want to know about as well.
Okay, so basically what happened was the songs were always written first, musically. The lyrics and that came after the fact. Now, because initially I had thought that Joe would be the singer of the group, I kind of left that in his hands. Now, as we started working on it, he insisted that I sing as well on it, right? So there are songs on this record where me and him co-write lyrics, and there are songs on here where he's the principal lyric writer. This song, for example, Better Posers, was completely his writing, even though I do sing in the verses on it, right? But I have no issue with that, because, singers, songwriters usually have things to say, and they're usually topics that are very strong to them, topics that are important to them. So what I kind of wanted to do was, since a lot of it he was going to be singing, I wanted to let the lyrics be more in his hands, because they come across better when there's something that's more personal to the person who is writing it, right? So I wanted to make sure that that was the case here, like that, since he was so not concerned, but that's a topic that he's very into, is the whole homelessness and the poverty situation that was going on in the UK, right? So he talks about that in the lyrics, and while I can understand that because we have the same kind of situations here in Canada, that was an easy situation to do. Will we come up with some lyrics where I might have to wrap my head around it? Maybe. It hasn't happened yet, right? But there have been songs, for example, another one that we're doing now, where I wrote the verses, all the lyrics for it, but then now he's going to fill in the blanks with the chorus and the pre-chorus. And that I'm curious to see, because I want to see how he's going to approach my lyrics and write within it.
Right, and that it's been, obviously, as a musician and a working musician, you have sung other people's lyrics before. I was wondering, after several years of really focusing on your own material, whether it was a challenge to go in, because when everyone writes their own music, they're kind of writing for their voice and how they sing, and everyone, pretty much sings differently, breathing and whatnot. So was it a challenge for you to sing someone else's, lyrics on this sort of material?
So far, I have to say it's been relatively smooth. I think the one thing about Joe that I like, and what he likes about me, is that we kind of have a good idea of what each other's strengths and weaknesses are. So when he wrote the melodies for this song, for example, he knew right away initially how to kind of structure the verse parts for my voice, which was fantastic because when I got it and he gave me a guide melody and said, "Here, Mark, this is how I kind of hear it. You can change it if you want, but this is how I kind of envision it. Do what you want with it." So I kind of took his melody, I changed a couple things here and there, but the main thing that I did was I added the harmonies to it in the verse parts. That was what he didn't have in there initially. I just added it in there, but it was very comfortable for me to sing. It was within a range that was very good for me, and that's one thing that Joe likes about when I write, is that when I give him the music, he right away can hear stuff because it's not in a range where he goes, "Oh shit, it's going to be high for me to sing here, or it's going to be not in a key that I like singing in." So it's been working out very good.
No Geddy Lee, right?
No, no.
How does Dark Monarchy, differ from your other side project that you've done? The Lower Third Collective. You did a what's that, a year ago or 18 months
Yeah,
ago?
yeah, something like
How does this kind of fit into where you're going musically on your journey?
that. I think this is kind of uh, it's in it's sort of the same wheelhouse, I think, as Project Gemini, in the sense that it's probably a progressive metal sort of uh, group that we're doing. Um, it's definitely more symphonic, a little bit more. I almost envision some of the parts like almost like in a movie, like like if you would envision like another Lord of the Rings chapter, like some of those big operatic parts that he puts in there and stuff like that can definitely fit in a scene in a movie, right? So I kind of look at it that this is going to explore my more uh, like tendencies that I wouldn't do so naturally in Project Gemini. Like for me, I wouldn't have thought of putting in choir stuff into my Project Gemini stuff. To me, Project Gemini is a little bit more mm, more. I don't think heavier is the right word. I think it's more cerebral, a little bit more touching on some of my other heavier influences like Dreams Theater and stuff like that, right? Which I have that have keyboards, but it's a little bit more heavier. There's a lot of 7-string guitars and stuff like that. So it's and a lot of double kick stuff. This is a little bit more, melodic, a little bit more, more European. That's the thing. If I was to make a comparison, I think that Dark Monarchy is kind of more rooted in European style metal, whereas Project Gemini is more like North American style progressive metal, like Fate's Warning and Dreams Theater and Spock's Beard and those kind of bands.
Right. There definitely seems to be a lot of elements coming together from both of your influences. I mean, it really, I'm not going to say it's all over the place because that makes it sound like it's cluttered, but you can tell there are multiple influences coming into play, but it's a very obviously identifiable style on its own. Your first single is out now and available on Bandcamp. What are the plans in terms of the album that you've spoken about? Where are you along in that process? Is this a taster to get a feel for how people are receptive to this project, or are you trundling along and quite far into those 8 tracks that you mentioned?
Well, we're about half done a record. For me, again, and this is one of the things I discussed with Joe, was that my vision for writing records is I kind of see a record in between 40 to 50 minutes, the absolute max. 2 reasons why. One is because I feel that people's attention span starts wandering after about 40 minutes, right? So to keep them there, you want to keep it short and sweet. Also because I'm a big fan of the vinyl format. And unless you're going to start doing double vinyls, which is out of my league right now as far as finances go, I want to make a vinyl release. It's got to be between 40, 45 minutes, right? So we agreed on that. With the way we were writing, because a lot of our songs end up being 8 minutes, 9 minutes, sometimes 11. We do have a 6-minute one now, right? So there will be maybe some leftover songs, which is always good because we can always use them as just standalone singles or stuff like that as well, B-sides. But our plan is to make a full record there's definitely going to be a CD release of it for sure. Vinyl, we're going to hope that the fan base that we start building, hopefully people from Project Gemini will get interested in it. Hopefully people from Joe's side will come into it. And hopefully there'll be some new people that get involved because they just like this music, right? And if that, starts happening and showing promise, then we will do a vinyl release of it as well. Now, no matter how it gets reacted to the first time, I'm a firm believer of giving a band at least a couple of albums chance before, saying, it's not working. So this is step one. There'll be at least another record or two I can see for sure.
Yep, you just have to wait and see how it feels, because as the creator, the artist, you both have to get something out of the project not only in terms of critical validation or anything else. I must say the track is very strong. It stands up well to the other material that you have released as Project Gemini and as the Lower Third Collective and even older stuff in your catalog. So I was very impressed by it. Why don't you let everyone know where they can find you and just give them the final details on the new track, Better Posers.
Okay, so I just put up a brand new Bandcamp page. So we are, in fact, the only Dark Monarchy on Bandcamp, which is fantastic. Because sometimes you see you put a band name and there's like 7 different versions of that name on there, right? So you just have to put in the Dark Monarchy. It's not just Dark Monarchy. It's the Dark Monarchy, and it will pop up there. I'll give you a link to it if you want to put it in the description at the bottom too later on for the link. But we have a page there. You can go on there now and you can hear the song as well. And if you feel up to it, if you want to maybe contribute and purchase it, it's only a measly $2 Canadian, which is like 50 cents American and 75 cents euro, right?
I think it was $1.53 on yesterday's exchange rate, which is perfectly reasonable for a nice long song that's good quality like that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. But we also have a Facebook group. So you just go on to Facebook and type in the Dark Monarchy. And once again, we're the Dark Monarchy there. There's also a separate, I guess they call them a page. There's a group page and then like a page. I don't know why they have it like that, but we have both of them. So you can find Dark Monarchy in either one of those there. And right now I'm also going to be working on getting a YouTube channel going as well. I know that you mentioned to me earlier that YouTube is having a little bit of a trouble right now, and that's probably happened last night as well, because when I was trying to set it up, it was going all over the place and not letting me do a hell of a lot on YouTube last night. So in time there will be a YouTube channel for the Dark Monarchy. So you'll find us in all the usual spots.
Fantastic, Mark. Well, thank you very much, for taking the time to do a quick, look, it's rock and roll podcast episode about a new project. It's exciting.
Yes.
So I hope you get a great response to it. And, send my congratulations to Joe, because I think he did a great job. A very silky voice, and his bass playing matches his voice. So very well executed on his part as well. But, Mark, we shall see you back on an episode about more music. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Bye. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.